Hello, everybody. I'd like to call to order the July 19th meeting of the Design Review Board. Can everyone please introduce themselves, starting with Cameron, please?
Cameron Boland, AIA representative.
Barry Childress, East Tennessee Community Design Center.
Matthew DeBard-Laban, Downtown Knoxville Alliance.
Rick Blackburn, Historic Zoning Commission.
Josh Wright, Urban Design Representative.
Lindsay Crockett, Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
Joey Natur, Business Development Representative.
Jared Worsham, Downtown Resident Representative.
Dallas DeArmond, Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
Christina McGrawn, City Law Department.
Brian Berry with City's Plans Review and Building Inspections.
Thank you for that. Thanks for coming, everyone. The minutes from June 21st have been distributed. Does anyone have any comments or corrections to those?
Motion to approve.
Second.
So I have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Did we have any staff reports, Lindsay?
Yes, there was one administrative approval since the last meeting. This was at the Medical Arts Building. The applicant is replacing in kind approximately 100 windows on the west elevation. That's not the elevation that's shown on the screen. Those are just showing the existing windows on that building. The windows are 4/2 double hung aluminum clad, and the new windows reflect a previous DRB staff approval for other sections of the building.
All right, thank you. Well, I guess we'll move on to infill housing. So we have 218 East Oldham Avenue, 7A23IH.
Yes. All right. So this is our one infill case for the day. This is a new primary residence fronting East Oldham Avenue. As you can see on the site plan here, it's a one-story residence that's 26 feet wide by 44 feet long. There's an 8-foot deep shed roof porch centered on the facade. The house is proposed to be set 36 feet from the front property line, and parking is located to the rear and accessed from the alley. The house features a 10/12 gable roof clad in asphalt shingles. There's an exterior of a vinyl lap siding with trim boards dividing the front and lower gable, or the front and rear gable fields, and the house rests on a stuccoed foundation. The applicant has also noted that they will be replacing that single light gable window that's shown in the drawings with a square louvered vent, and they plan to make minor modifications to placement of 3 windows on this side elevation, namely shifting this window back towards the rear. Some of the comments: this house is proposed to be set 36 feet from the front property line. The average front setback of the block is 31. The adjacent houses, as you can see in their site plan here, are 41 feet and then 18 feet from the front property line. So this front setback will serve as a transition between the 2 adjacent houses and create a consistent streetscape. The parking meets the infill housing design guidelines as it's accessed from the alley and located to the rear of the house. The final site plan may need minor modifications to meet city engineering standards. Overall, the porch design is compatible with the design guidelines. The 1.5-story 3-bay facade is similar in scale to the context. Speaking of windows and doors, the guidelines recommend that the windows and door styles be similar to historic houses on the block. Overall, this design includes sufficient windows on the facade and side elevations, and the drawings include a simple window trim. The modifications described by the applicant to the side elevation, which is just shifting this one towards the rear, are also appropriate. The roof pitch and the material, and then the siding material, is appropriate within the guidelines. So staff's recommending approval of 7A23IH, subject to the conditions that the final site plan meets city engineering standards and the vinyl siding feature an overlap similar to woodlap siding instead of a Dutch lap or flush panel siding.
Thank you for that, Lindsay. Is the applicant here, and would they like to speak? Okay, thank you. Are there any comments from the board?
I was just a couple quick ones on the 6-inch square columns trim at the top and bottom. Does that mean that the actual column is just going to be exposed wood that's painted? Perfect. Yeah, that's what I was hoping. Just so you're going to wrap it all in trim to trim it out nice. And then,
Sir, do you mind just real quick? Would you come up to the podium, give us your name and address? Yeah, thank you. No worries.
Will you say your name and address for the record?
Yes, Spencer Stanley and 218 East Oldham Avenue.
Yeah, and the last comment, I've made this one before, just when we stucco over block, a suggestion, I'm not requiring it, but just a suggestion would be when that stucco actually touches the landscape, if you add a buffer of just landscape stone or something like that, it helps it last longer and it doesn't have spray back when you weed eat and stuff around it. I just seen a lot of houses around that neighborhood that the stucco deteriorates after a couple of years just because of lawn maintenance. It's just you get up on it with your weed eater and everything. So it just makes the house look nicer longer. It ages better. So.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I like to make the motion to pass per staff recommendation.
All right, Joe Natuur has made a motion, and Perry Childress has seconded. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, now we are on to public improvements for the 500 to 600 blocks of Gay Street, 7A23DT. Lindsay?
So I'm just going to give a brief rundown of the comment side of this, and then I'm going to let the consultant for the city give a brief presentation. I'll let them show those slides themselves. So I just wanted to give some context. So per the zoning code, the design of public improvements that are initiated by the city and KUB, such as improvements to or new construction of streets, sidewalks, wayfinding, and other signs, etc., must be submitted to the design review board for approval. And then we make a recommendation on to the mayor and city council. So that Josh had asked the context of the DRB's purview in this. In general, the design guidelines for the public realm apply here. So those emphasize prioritizing pedestrian safety through public amenities, pedestrian scale lighting, and sidewalks and crosswalks that are accessible and aesthetically pleasing. The guidelines recommend installing and timing traffic signals to maximize pedestrian safety and convenience, and then a comprehensive wayfinding system for pedestrians. These design guidelines are copied in the staff report. Overall, this proposal meets the guidelines as it involves the in-kind replacement of signal poles at intersections of Knoxville's downtown that have significant pedestrian traffic along with automobiles. They've been evaluated by the city and their consultant for safety and placement and construction, and the design will replicate the existing. So staff's recommending approval of 7A23DT as submitted.
So Patrick Five Ash, 2210 Martha Berry Drive. So here we're here to excuse me, quickly talk about the Gay Street signal replacement. So why are we here? If you guys go out on Gay Street, you can know why we're here. This picture on my right, some yours left, is a pin that's stuck in the bottom of one of the signals. They're deteriorating and they need to be replaced. They were put in late 80s, and there's some aesthetics that are starting to show, as the one you can see on the left there, Church Street. And so the city brought us, Gresham Smith, on board to come up with some solutions. And so we looked at different replacement types. The one you see on the left is from Tempe, Arizona. We looked at some that were in Dallas and Nevada as well. The difference you can see in that one is there's two posts coming down. And due to we know what's out there on Gay Street and foundations, we didn't feel that a two-post system would replicate exactly what's out there, plus the foundations of the unknowns of what is under Gay Street. And so on the right is the existing plans from the 80s. And so we're going to be able to use these as part of our bid documents, so the contractor will be able to replicate the poles that are out there today. You guys have seen this with the packet. This is an example of the preliminary plans we've submitted to Evan in the city. So the poles are going to go back in their exact location that they are today. There may be some modification, and it's going to depend as we start construction. We're going to go back with the exact same signage that's out there today. The wayfinding signs, any of the signs that are on the existing posts today will be replaced in kind, but they will be upgraded. so they're going to be new. And so the foundations, we have 3 different types of foundations out there. We have these 2 that are shafts that are roughly 3 to 4 feet in the ground. And so our plan is to go out there, take the existing pole off, cut that little bit of that foundation off, rotate the base plate, and put in a new base plate, and hopefully that works. We're going to have the geotech on board, and we have our structural team on board that will work with the contractor as we go. That's our plan. And then for the bottom one you see, there are roughly 2 to 3, we don't know for sure because we haven't been down there yet, that are located in basements. And so they have one that goes to the sidewalks and has a little box that sits up under the roof. It may be as big as that little as a projector there. And so we've got to figure out how that looks. Evan and his team are working with the real estate and the civil department on how we're going to approach this. Are we going to get in there as a design team and look at it? Are we going to give the contractors access to it before they bid, or is it just going to be open and they bid and they kind of figure out as they go? That's the only kind of giddy up that we see in this. They're going to go back as they were today. There will be 3 new pedestrian pole, smaller 5-footers for push buttons, and then some 10-footers for the pedestrian heads, because 3 of them do not meet ADA requirements today. And so we've got to replace those for when the pedestrian crosses the crosswalk. They got to have one that they can see. And so our plan is going to be able to tell the contractor to match the same type of post today, the square post. That's it. It's straightforward. Any questions or concerns I can answer for you guys?
I'm actually a little surprised that the city did not try to work off of the light posts that were there in some way, rather than replacing them with the kind of modernized 80s version.
Light poles aren't as strong as the signal poles. Their foundations are smaller. We could have replicated that type of pole. One thing I know from the restriction that we had when we first started is no mast arm. No mast arm that goes out over Gay Street due to the parades and activities that go on through Gay Street.
One question I had was, with as far as the directional piece, you've got Market Square, the zoo, North Knox, etc. Has there been any consideration towards, with the development of the Old City and the stadium, adding any sort of directional signage, or if that could be added in the future?
As part of our project, it has not, but the signal pole itself will be able to handle any type of new signs we're going to put up there, because we're going to look at options of strapping or possibly using bolts. And the city has a great their own sign department, so they can make signs. But that's something that I think everyone needs to look at as they continue. One other thing I forgot to add. We're only going to do one intersection at a time. So if you see in those plans, we're going to treat each intersection like a 4-way stop. So we'll put up temporary stop signs, and we'll only do one pole at a time to make sure pedestrians have their access, and that sidewalks are open. If any sidewalks need to be closed, there'll be a detour plan submitted by the contractor and approved by the But we don't anticipate any of those, but you never know out there with Gay Street.
What's the timeline? When are you going to start construction on this, if approved?
This is our preliminary set of plans, so we are ready after this approval with you all. We're ready to submit our final construction plans to Evan and his team, and then we'll put the project out for bid. We can get our plans ready probably within 6 weeks and get that to Evan and his team to put out the bid, and that bidding process is 3 weeks, month, so. Yeah, we say. And the big thing is going to be there'll be a little bit of delay once it's awarded before the poles can be manufactured. These aren't poles they can just go do. We had discussions with the people from Tempe, Arizona, and it was about a 3 to 4 month leeway time to get those walls, but hopefully they'll be manufactured.
And Lindsay, you said, we look at it as approved through the guidelines, but then City Council has to approve this as well.
I'm not certain if there's a next step legislatively. I think council would most likely be involved in approving the bids. But we just, in the DRB process, the design review board reviews the public improvements based on the guidelines, and then we just send a recommendation to the mayor or city council where applicable.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion to approve based on staff recommendations.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll let's get hooked up here, but we're our next one is a sign for 210 West Magnolia Avenue, 7B23DT.
I'll go ahead and get started, and the projection is working on that TV screen. This might give you a headache. So we are looking at 210 West Magnolia Avenue. This is the Tennessee Valley Bicycles, and the applicant is proposing a new illuminated projecting sign. It measures 43 inches wide, or 44.6 inches at the largest point, by 42 inches tall, so that's a 12.54 square feet. It'll project from above the entry on the storefront system, and it's 11 feet 6 inches above the sidewalk level at the lowest point. It's an internally illuminated sign with a white background and a darker text and logo. This sign is installed on a block that's zoned DKW, but it's outside of the historic district, so those guidelines don't apply. I provided the grid district guidelines for reference as well in the staff report. The sign is slightly larger than that recommended 9 square feet, so the larger size has to be discussed and approved by the board. This block is located at the northwestern periphery of the DK zoning. It faces a surface parking lot under the I-40 overpass. It's a slightly larger sign than 9 square feet would not necessarily have a detrimental effect on this block. Typically, internal illumination with a full white background is discouraged in downtown design review. Typically, we encourage applicants to limit internal illumination to push-through letters and logos instead of the full sign. However, the board may choose to discuss the internal illumination area in this block and this sign application. So the staff recommendation is approved subject to the condition that the internal illumination be limited to push-through letters or graphics.
Thank you for that, Lindsay. Is the applicant here? Please state your name and address, please.
Pat Bowles, 2113 Pewter Drive, Knoxville.
Thanks for coming. Do you have any more to add than what Lindsay has to say?
No, I'll just answer the questions. It's whatever you got. The push through lettering. There's 26 letters in their name, and to do the push throughs, that would increase the size of the sign because they take so much more. The stroke in the letters takes so much more room in order just to make them push throughs, and it's just it's catch-22. You make the sign larger to meet the criteria for push-through lettering, or you do just a flat-face sign. Plus, their logo is not conducive to. There's just too much detail to it. We'd have to increase the sign to that, the size of the sign, in order to recreate their logo the way that it is designed.
All right, thank you for that. Does the board have any comments or questions?
I have a question that Lindsay may be able to show us. Is there not an internally lit historic sign on that block that remains as we go back toward Gay? I don't know if it's the free service sign, or it seemed like there was another one that's now at a vacant lot, but the sign's still there and has been reserved. Well, the Mac one's a block away. But it was back toward free service.
Are you referring to
Yes, that one.
this one?
Yes.
I'm not sure if it has an illumination or not.
Looks like it may have been neon at one point. So, yeah. Okay. That was the sign I was thinking of. I just didn't know if there was some sort of precedent for the internal lighting.
I think that actually is a neon sign that's not functioning anymore.
No neon left.
Right.
I hope the sign remains.
Right. Now the free service sign is,
It's gone.
or then was lit, internally.
What's its size compared to the public house sign is next to it? It'll be adjacent to it. Is it much larger?
I don't have a measurement. I believe that it is 9 square feet, but 9 square feet measuring around as a box around the circle. So obviously there's negative space there. And then this one is 12.54 square feet.
Right. And I guess the only discussion point I would have is that it's starting to set a precedent for that development on that side of like the type of signage we allow and that sort of thing, like how we already have on Gay Street, since there's so much development on this road. My only question with the internally illuminated is like with white especially is like how do you mitigate like it might seem silly, but like being built up with like dead flies and stuff like that, is that something that occurs?
What's the question?
That sign will be white and you'll be able to see into it if it's internally lit. I'm imagining just like a buildup of like dead bugs inside of it over time.
Well, it's over time, but it is a contained unit. I mean, there's, I guess over time with deterioration, yes, but that's a long.
Would the owners be able to take it off or take a faceplate off or something and be able to clean it out?
With a 12-foot ladder, yes. Absolutely. All it takes is a screwdriver and
right.
Somebody's not afraid to be 12 feet in the air.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the size, because of its location to the street and the interstate, is not so much a problem, but the internally lit issue, I mean, that's just very specific to our requirements to not allow that. So I would have a hard time personally proving that.
I think we may have approved a internally lit one based on a study of how bright it is. I don't know how we proceeded on that, but I believe it was the Vita sign, and it was another situation where the logo just didn't lend itself well to push through, and we got some assurances for foot candles or something about the level of lighting. I think maybe something like that might apply here as to just how bright this thing is to be.
Well, we can actually, and I'd be happy, to talk to the business owner. He can have that put on a timer where his hours are essentially 8 to 5. He can have it put on a timer and have it turned off at night, or have it turned off or it's going to be off at 8 o'clock or whatever. So, and that's all you got to do is put a timer on the breaker. And I'll let him know that that's one of the conditions. See, there's no, when you're talking about the historic district, there's no slowing down of traffic there, like the stop signs in the old city and all that. So, sizing like that is also, the people are going by it. They're not stopping, stop. I mean, they're going 35 to 50 miles an hour right there. So, it needs to be seen.
Did you include an elevation with where it was going to be installed in elevation, like on that facade? There's not? Okay. Is there any existing openings or anything like that on the wall to be able to bolt through that's already there? Not that this is historic in that nature, but just for mitigated damage on the building.
It would, I don't know if your question, see the doorway right there under that big white banner that he has?
Uh-huh.
It's be going over that doorway.
Okay. I was just asking if there was any existing sign that was there in the past that we could use those same bolt holes in some way. But
I can't answer that. I don't know.
understood.
Then I'm guessing the banner's going away.
The banner's blown away. It's the banner's gone.
Banner's gone. Yeah.
Do you think maybe a timer or dimmer might address the concern of internally lit with the board?
I think that determination is up to the board. I think that's an appropriate solution in this application, if that's something y'all agree with.
What's the value of an illuminated sign that only is on during the daytime?
That's what I was about to
Yeah,
say. The
I
owner.
kind of agree.
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna put it on
I
timer
wanted
and turn it off at night. So
Do we
I mean,
know
he
if
wants
the
it lit,
public,
and I think it would look good lit. It's got to be lit appropriately, though. I think.
do we know if the public house sign is illuminated?
I don't know that, and I can look it up.
If it is, it's not.
It seems like it'd be hard to light the black letters in black. So they'd have to change its color scheme, and I think it's a unique color scheme.
Yeah, the graphics don't. You're right. It would be a different graphic design for it completely. That's not their logo.
Are you talking about in the push-through lettering?
Yeah.
Well, the push-through lettering, you don't light the face of the letter anyway. It comes through the sides of the letters and makes a halo appearing. So you don't really light the black. But like I said, with the stroke and the size of that letter,
It's gonna get weird.
I would have to increase the size of that sign. Not twofold, but close to it.
Because you wouldn't be able to read the letters at that point unless you
Well,
did
you
that.
can't cut them.
Okay.
You can't cut them and have that distinct of an edge to them.
Mm-hmm.
They're just too small to physically make.
And the owner of the public house is the same owner of this building, I think. So I was just thinking about the size of the signs and them being in line.
What was that about the owner?
Same owner
Oh, okay.
of the buildings. And the next one.
I think with Vita, he had examples of the lighting, the dimmer lighting, and that was helpful. It's hard to. And this looks like it's going to be pretty bright. Yeah, I know this is just a mock-up, but it's going to have to be.
Joey is correct. The Vita sign that Perry referenced, the sort of lighting study, he had provided a couple of different renderings and some specifics on the illumination of the sign. But, with a typical like LED internal illumination, that's not something we get.
Well, and
the
if
Vita
I-
sign's on Gay Street, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, the Avita sign, the coloration of the sign and the way it was lit was part of the total design of the sign. It wasn't simply a white background that was lit. I'm just worried that sign, if we allow this to be the precedent, that will be what is put up all over that street, and we certainly can't tell someone no after we allow that to be there.
It's really a question if the owner would be okay with it not being lit at night. And it's a completely different discussion at that point. But then anybody could think as an owner he wants his sign lit at night so people can see his product as they drive by or they walk by.
And there's no way to enforce that. And honestly, I think it looks, lit signs along a pedestrian pathway create a sense of security.
Yep.
And if you turn that light off at night, it'll actually decrease that because it's like, oh, well, that's a shuttered business or something. I don't think we want to
Just making me question if Public House's sign is lit or not. I feel like it has to be, like the yellow glows or something. I was trying to find a picture on my phone and couldn't.
You have any suggestions on working with us a little bit on?
Well, to do, like as mentioned previously, to do what the board is suggesting, I'll have to increase the size of the sign.
Right, but do you have any suggestions besides the board, maybe to help? Besides this, I mean, I understand.
And not work, and not other than what I mentioned previously, and being able to have the customer's logo, which he's had professionally designed, and he uses it on everything. You know, it's unique to say the least, but we
especially
are
for a bike store.
Pardon?
Especially for a bike store, it's unique.
Yeah, but you know, we didn't design it for him. You know, he gave it to us. So, you know, to be able to use all the components of his name and the logo, and to have push through lettering, we would have to increase the size of the sign. I've not drawn it out. I can't tell you if I need 3 extra square feet or 10. I don't know.
The another, I mean, this is still at a detriment probably to what the owner wants, but I mean, they always see TVB as like their main acronym, or not acronym, but initials for that would be better because those could be larger letters. But again, we're not here to design it for you. I'm just thinking like what could be easily pushed through lit and not individual little letters it wouldn't have to increase the sign size at that point.
Well,
But people probably don't, I mean, like on his banner, he's got TVB. I'm wondering if the sign could say TVB lit sign.
And there's other options like direct lighting of the sign, that sort of thing, rather than internal illumination.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Or from the
TVB
sign itself.
he had that made, the banner, from what I understand, it's just conversation with my customer before he had the logo design, and like I said, it's unique. It doesn't show you anything about a bicycle, so the word bicycle's got to be there. TVB's not going to work, or TVB is not going to make you think it's a bicycle shop.
It's been that way for 10 years, hasn't it? That's what Eric Olgren's done, right? Isn't that his shop? Anyway, we could maybe reiterate what's the negative part of the backlit sign. Like it's it looks like it's just unclassy. It's not in kind to what we have downtown on Gay Street. It doesn't have precedent. It just doesn't fit in with what we do in Knoxville's downtown proper. That's the reason why we're scrutinizing it.
Well, and it doesn't fit our guidelines. Like
Right.
that's our job, to do those guidelines. Now, I think there's some flexibility there, right? I mean, I think the bigger sign for me personally is okay. So, but I do think we need to go back and relook at the internally lit nature of the sign. So I'll make a motion to approve per staff recommendations. And if you want to make, and the staff recommendation is internal illumination to be changed to something else like push through letters or graphics or something else that meets the design guidelines, but that would allow your size to be increased
Okay.
to what you have.
Could an option be, and this is be an owner question possibly, to not have it internally lit, but have it lit by 2 lights mounted on the building that shine on it, rather than from inside of it? And that's more traditionally how the blade signs that we approve are lit,
Right.
is with the external lights, and could still have the LED wrap that goes around the outside edge. But that seems like an option that would fit the guidelines that we're supposed to try to enforce. Of course, there are guidelines, but is that as another option, Josh, on your motion, either the push-through lighting or external lighting be the two options? And I guess you need to bring it back to us next month.
Yes,
Or
or
let's-
actually,
or
I
let
could,
staff approve it based on those two
yes.
options.
I thought that, and I may have just misunderstood, that push through lettering was a recommendation. Is that a requirement?
This is in the design guidelines, so these aren't a requirement from the code, from the zoning ordinance, but they're the design guidelines. So that's what this board is charged with reviewing applications for their adherence to.
Okay, well that's part of my misunderstanding.
Okay,
I
so
think you could say your motion.
yeah,
one
I'll
more
say my
time.
motion again. I'll recommend. I'll make a motion to approve per staff recommendations that the size of the sign as shown is acceptable, but the illumination must be changed to either push-through letters or external illumination with staff review and approval.
And you said that the size of the sign is fine. As I mentioned, the sign to do the push throughs, the size of the sign will have to increase
I
in
would say
order to
from
get all
from a
that.
staff perspective, if the size of the sign increased, I would request that it come back in front of the board.
Okay. So as shown, the size of the sign is okay, but if you have to increase it, you'll need to bring it back to us.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Besides me.
I'll follow up with you tomorrow and we can talk about this further.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got a new building, 121 Union Avenue, 7C23DT. Lindsay?
So I'll give a brief summary, mostly go through the comments, and then I'll let the applicants make clarifications and sort of give the overall program. I've got most of your slides here, and then I have the whole application, so I'll be able to pull up whatever y'all want shown. This is a new 6-story mixed-use construction. It has 5 stories of residential apartments above a mixed-use ground floor level with 2 stories of structured parking to the rear. As you can see on the screen right now with the site, this building is proposed for a rectangular site at the intersection of Union Avenue and State Street. It currently has a surface parking lot, and the building will be S-shaped, as you can see the site photos here. And the building will be ultimately S-shaped, which has 2 amenity decks on the 2nd floor, one facing the west and one facing the east. Going back to this access diagram, the parking garage has 2 access points for the separate levels. There's one access point on Union Avenue and then one extending east off State Street. The building features multiple ground level pedestrian access points. You can see those indicated in the red arrows here, including off private stoops on the State Street elevation. And then there are several entries to the retail tenant, the private office spaces, and the apartment leasing office on the southwest corner of the building. I'm going to hop forward to some of these renderings just to discuss some design elements. This building rests on a foundation of cast-in-place concrete. The design has a primary exterior element of a fiber cement panels that are gray architectural block. There are recessed panels of wood look fiber cement, and then ribbed black metal look fiber cement panels on recessed vertical bands. There are vertical bays that extend upwards on those 5 residential stories, featuring single and paired single light fiberglass windows, and then full light paired aluminum clad wood entry doors and balconies. And you can see the material breakdown on these elevations here. So I will run through some of these comments and the staff recommendation, and then I'll let the applicant talk a little more about the design if needed. This building is proposed for a surface parking lot and surrounded by 2015 multifamily residential to the north, a structured parking lot to the west, and then a State Street parking garage to the south with the KUB substation to the east. The non-parking structures on this block are largely residential, including the Cal Johnson building at 301 State Street. And then the Marble Alley buildings are contemporary style new construction. So these buildings don't really, or this block doesn't really have a consistent architectural context. You can see that indicated on the site here. The application includes a 2-level parking garage that has access off Union and State Street. The parking access will replace an existing curb cut to the surface lot, so that's right here. And then only one new curb cut will be created through the sidewalk. Overall, these access points meet the design guidelines as they don't create additional safety issues for pedestrians. The parking garage meets the design guidelines as it's located under the structure, and it provides for retail, residential, and office uses that line the garage to State Street. And it has a commercial use at the corner location. The final site plan and garage should meet city engineering standards. The design guidelines also emphasize a pedestrian-scaled environment from block to block. This building will reinforce the pedestrian environment along State Street, creating additional pedestrian traffic to residential and commercial uses in the building. It has a distinct ground floor separated from upper level residential floors, divided into a base and top, and you can see that indicated on these renderings here. The design guidelines emphasize a largely transparent and consistent rhythm of entrances and windows on the ground floor. The building does meet these design guidelines. It has entrances proportionate to the building's width and height, and the primary front entrances are oriented to the main street on State Street. Looking at the materials, the design guidelines recommend that materials relate to the scale, durability, color, and texture of the predominant materials in the area. The surrounding area immediately is characterized by new infill construction and concrete parking garages. However, there are historic masonry buildings located further to the northwest, west, and south. In the opinion of staff, fiber cement siding doesn't demonstrate the same durability or detail as those historic masonry buildings to the west and northwest. The vertical wood look fiber cement does not typically complement the character of downtown Knoxville, as that unfinished wood siding wouldn't have been applied to multi-story downtown buildings originally. In this instance, it is on recessed massings, and it contributes some depth, and it is used as a secondary material. The proposal meets the design guidelines for residential buildings as well, separating residential accesses from the street level and separating them from the pedestrian flow on the sidewalk via stoops. Just some final ones. Any exterior mechanical equipment or service utilities not indicated on the plans should be located on secondary elevations and receive screening as necessary. The signs as depicted don't contain sufficient information for DRB's review at this time, so a separate signage application should be submitted to the DRB for further review. And then the final note there has been a revision that incorporates a live workspace on the ground level. Right now, the initial proposal incorporated ground floor residential uses in the DKG subdistrict. The applicant has stated to pursue a rezoning, which would allow ground floor residential uses. So the DRB approval would be contingent on that rezoning or on revisions to those ground floor units. As proposed, the design does meet the design and dimensional standards of the DKB district if it submits for that. And so go through some lighting and elevations, but the staff recommendation is to approve 7C23DT subject to the conditions that the final site plan and parking garage meet city engineering standards. The final landscaping plan meet the relevant standards of the city zoning code and the design guidelines. Mechanical equipment or service utilities not shown on plans should be placed on secondary elevations and receive screening as necessary. The signage returned to the DRB as a separate application. The final project should comply with any applicable redevelopment agreements with the city of Knoxville. And then the applicant should pursue the necessary rezoning within the subdistricts to allow for that current program or submit revised designs to the board.
Thank you for that, Lindsay. And just remember, everybody, we did have a workshop with this last week or last month. Would the applicant like to add anything?
Scott Busby, Smee Busby Architects, 2554 Sutherland Avenue.
Catherine Greer, MHM Architects, 550 West Main Street.
Thank you. Do you have anything else to add to what Lindsay had to say?
No, I think the update that Lindsay went through was the classification of the 7 ground floor units. There's still retail live work is still classified as R2, so it is classified as residential. So it still requires us to go through rezoning to get the district to DKB, the sub-district. But I think we're going to actively pursue that, and we did have a follow-up with the city of Knoxville and a lot of different groups that would be reviewing this for final plans review, and that was their recommendation as well.
We're applying next week.
Okay, thank you. And were there any other modifications to this from our workshop last month?
Not in this package.
We did lower the ground floor about 18 inches, but that's it.
Okay. Thank you. Does anyone have any comments or questions?
I'd like to note that the Downtown Knoxville Alliance did a parking study for downtown recently, and the parking lot next to this is the largest parking lot downtown with, I think, 1,100 spaces. It's free on nights and weekends, which means it's great for your retail spot there and any future public use. So just encourage you to consider pushing for public use somewhere around there to liven the street.
One thing that I would maybe add is I walk by like up this street quite often, and where this is going, there's that embankment that's the grass. And so a lot of times you'll see residents from Marble Alley or in that area walk their dogs right through there. So maybe having some consideration to how residents would maybe walk their dogs, just in the sense of that grassy area won't be there with this development.
That's a good comment to make, but I do believe there is a dedicated dog park a block away. So I think that is being a civic amenity space that is being met currently. But good to consider that.
If there are no more questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to pass for staff recommendations.
Thank you. We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
then Cameron,
Thank you, guys.
were you recused officially? Okay, thank you. All right, up next, this is our last one, 500 Clinch Avenue, another sign, 7D23DT.
Okay. So this is new signs and new flat metal awnings, and the applicants have provided some additional printouts that I didn't necessarily have enough for everybody, but I put them between y'all's seats so you can check out those. So these are new signs for the parking garage and new flat metal awnings. The review of these awnings installation is after the fact. These awnings have already been installed. So you can see photos of them as installed here. The awning on Walnut Street measures 5 feet wide by 28 feet long, and it's installed 9.25 feet above the sidewalk. The awning on Clinch Avenue measures 5 feet wide by 28 feet long, and it's 8 feet 6 inches above the sidewalk level. And I have some additional photos and measurements provided by the applicant if folks want to look at those. The two signs measure 36 inches wide by 120 inches long, so those are 30 square feet. And they are internally illuminated, but with the push-through letters spelling out public parking. The sign on Walnut Street currently is shown as 11 feet 6 inches above the sidewalk and then 10 feet 10 inches above the sidewalk. The applicant intends to install the new signs in the same location as the existing parking signs. So the design guidelines for the grid district recommend projecting signs of a modest size, like 9 square feet, with larger signs to be approved by the board. New projecting signs approved by the board are typically around 11 to 15 square feet, with the largest projecting signs approved for businesses on Gay Street These are the existing signs were installed prior to the creation of the Downtown Design Review Board, and they don't conform to the design guidelines. The new signs are proposed at 30 square feet, and they indicate the parking garage, so they should be reduced in size to meet the design guidelines. The internal illumination does meet the guidelines and past board approvals, and then the signs should meet the relevant aspects of the city sign code and the building code. The awnings were installed without the required city permits or design review approval. Awnings should meet the relevant aspects of the city zoning code, including 10.3.f, which requires a vertical clearance of at least 9 feet from the sidewalk. The Clinch Avenue awning does not currently meet the code as it was installed. It's 8 feet 6 inches above the sidewalk, and the applicants have requested a variance based on this information. This was the first step in the after the fact review, so they haven't gotten this information in permitting. So they'll need to seek a variance or remove that awning and reinstall it 9 feet above the sidewalk. The awnings, as installed or revised, should meet the relevant aspects of the city zoning code and building code. So staff's recommending approval subject to the conditions that the parking signs be reduced in size with approval by staff, and then the sign and awnings meet the relevant aspects of the city zoning code and building codes, including that necessary revision or the after the fact approval via variance of the awning on Clinch Avenue.
Thank you for that, Lindsay. Would the applicant like to comment more?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm Nick Kazana, 1225 East Wise Garber, Jared Herring, also the same address. In January, we purchased the second ugliest building in downtown Knoxville. And you'll have to guess which is the first ugliest building in downtown Knoxville. We won't talk about that. We had 3 goals. One is to paint it immediately. And if you can see from our first illustration, the orange building was a little bit unattractive. And if you look at the second page, we have already painted the garage, and it looks substantially more attractive. The second part was signage. Right now, it has a minimal amount of signage. It's dated, probably 40 years old. And the issue there is if we go to a smaller sign, we're handicapped because there are big trees along Clinch Avenue, which hide the sign. So what we would like to suggest, if we would be allowed to have a larger sign as we've proposed. The third part would be dealing with the awnings, and Jared will discuss that. But I want to ask if there are any questions on the signage or the exterior that you would like to ask.
So it sounds like, does anyone have any concerns with the increase in size or the lighting of the sign?
Where are the trees we're talking about that are making it?
All down Clinch.
If you look, there's a tree right on the corner, and then there's 6 or 7 trees to your right, headed west.
And the size being increased is going to mitigate the tree being in front of it, or just being able to be? Is it going to?
You'll be able to see it. Right now, the trees block it. Sorry. Right now, the trees block it.
We're saying with trees there on Clinch Avenue, it makes it harder to see the signs. The street is also naturally a very shady street with the height of both buildings on Clinch. So it's just a dark street to begin with. So having a larger sign, internally illuminated with the push-through letters, is what we're hoping for on Clinch. We understand that the sign on Walnut is a smaller sign, and we're okay with that sign being smaller, but we wanted to highlight the entrance for the vehicles on Clinch, and that's why the sign would need to be larger.
Are these proposed signs bigger than the blue ones that were there?
No, the existing sign on Clinch is larger than the sign that we're proposing.
So they're already smaller than what has been
Right.
there.
Those are obviously non-conforming signs from 40 years ago. Right. And another thing I want to point out too is this particular garage has been associated with the Hilton Hotel for forever. Most people don't realize it is a public garage. And so with the larger signage indicating public parking, that's our goal, to allow, Mr. Kazana and the owners of the garage to have a better idea for people to know that, hey, anybody can park here.
That's funny you say that because I always tell people park at the Hilton.
Interesting, when we were discussing this with the city, the officials in the mayor's office did not realize that this was public parking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They thought it was Hilton's garage and other people could park there on occasion. So we would appreciate that.
I know the Hilton's about to be renovated though. Eventually, is that always going to be public parking?
Yes, sir.
Well, and as a neighborhood resident, I do really appreciate you painting that building.
I'm sorry.
I said, as a neighborhood resident, I do really appreciate you painting that building.
It was rather unattractive.
So the lighting for the sign is the push-through letters. It's not a backlit type
Yeah,
thing.
if you look to the left on the rendering there of the sign, that's all that will be illuminated. So it's an aluminum face sign, and then the border and the push through letters are all that will be lit.
What's this for? Is this for reference?
That's talking about the awning because we were going to talk about the sign and the awning as two separate things.
We'll cover that with our discussion with the awnings.
In the packet that we were given, the signs look like they are higher than what's already in place. Was there a plan to increase the height of them, or is that just how the rendering came out?
Yeah, that's just a rendering, just to give us a kind of a base reference for what we plan to do. But with power being located where it is for the existing signs, we want to maintain the existing locations of the signs. I will say the one sign I believe on Walnut is not currently even illuminated because it's just the wires are not connected. So overall, as Mr. Kazana's kind of said, we're trying to invest a lot of money in this garage, improve it. It's been an eyesore forever. It's already a huge, facelift from what it was previously, but we want to make it look inviting, safe, something that customers and, pedestrians, vehicles want to actually go into.
One thing though that is interesting is on the rendering they purposely left out the tree when you're looking west that would block that sign. The tree doesn't look like it's doing very well to begin with, but in support of your all's effort, is it still getting the view you want heading towards the sun sphere, heading west? There should be a tree right here, right? It's that one. So
Well, I think in this rendering, the hope I think their intent was that the tree would not be here, but the tree is there, and removing trees is not something that we're even discussing. So, with the tree being there, and all the trees going down Clinch, that's the desire for the square footage to be larger, specifically on the Clinch side of the building.
I can't read the actual height because the rendering shows these signs much bigger than the blue existing signs. But you're saying that they're going to match that height. I can't read the.
Right. And I would just clarify from what we received for the application is what you're seeing on the screen and what's in the packet. This is stuff we got at the meeting today.
Yeah.
And I would agree that there are some inconsistencies between the drawings submitted in the application and this rendering.
But I can't. Well, I guess my question is, what's the actual height in the render in the drawings?
Height of the sign or the
The sign.
We have the clearance above the sidewalk. So this one is 11 foot 5 inches, and this one is 10 foot 10 inches above the sidewalk level.
Are you talking about the cabinet? The sign cabinet itself is 120 inches tall.
It's in our packet.
I can see it up there.
It's 120
it's
by
dimensioned
36.
So it actually would more match this rendering. I don't think those signs are those signs 10 feet tall.
No.
They might be actually.
The existing one on Clinch may be very close to that. The other one is significantly smaller on Walnut.
I think the larger size is appropriate for two reasons. One, if you look down Clinch, you don't see any smaller signs that these are trying to compete against. But more importantly, think about when you come from out of town and you're trying to find a place to park. What's the hardest thing to do if you're in Asheville or Nashville or a place like that is identify where that place is. And I think because of that, the larger sign is appropriate.
But just for a point of clarification, you're proposing two sizes, but we've got a packet that only shows one size. 120 inches is the size for both, or is there a smaller size that's being proposed in the packet?
The packet the proposal is that both signs would be the same size, but we're here to say that we would concede a smaller size sign on Walnut
Oh, you could see that. Yeah. Okay. You're-
if we were allowed to keep the size on Clinch. That's our top priority.
Understood. Okay. Just making sure what was actually being proposed. Got it.
How tall would a sign be if it was 9 square feet? I wonder.
Well, it'd be 10 feet.
No, but if it was 9 square feet, this is 30 square feet. I'm just, would it go from 10 feet to 3 feet? If it was still 3 feet wide, I guess it would. Be a lot smaller.
We can also continue, and if y'all have asked enough questions, we can review the awnings as well because the motion will cover both of them. So did you guys have clarification that you wanted to make on the awning?
Yes.
Yeah. So on the awnings, as we stated before, we're kind of bound by a 40-year-old garage with 6'9" openings for people to drive their vehicles in. I do realize that it says we have to be at 9 feet. We're at 8.6. We do have examples in the pamphlet that we gave you guys of existing awnings. One right across the road from us on the same street on Clinch being 8.5 feet tall. We have multiple ones on Union and Locust. So there's precedent, I guess, for the awnings to be below the 9 feet mark. Even the city awning that's on Locust that comes out of our garage, it's a breezeway. It's mounted at 6'9", which is the same as our opening into the garage. And so with it being 9 feet, the way it's mounted at 8.6 is just an architectural, the way it fits above the opening of the 6'9". So with it being bound already at 6'9", I don't know what raising it another 4 inches really does, I guess is my point. Versus, I mean, if someone's going to hit something, they're going to hit a concrete header before they hit an awning. So
I'd just make a clarification for the board members on that's an element of the city zoning code and not the design guidelines. So the board does not have the capacity to issue a variance for that in the DK zone. So this is something that they'll have to have varied from the Board of Zoning Appeals or move. So that's why it's addressed that way in the item number 2 on the staff recommendation. We don't have the capacity to vary a height requirement of an awning.
I don't mean to be facetious, but then why are we talking about it? Why are we talking about it if we've got no purview over it?
Well, we have purview over awnings and installation of awnings. So if they'd gone through the proper process and gone through design review and then
we're back
permitting, we would review the awnings. But yes, this is an after the fact review.
So we can say we're fine with an 8'6" awning, but you're going to have to talk to them
on a variance, right?
to get the variance. Yes,
which we are in the process of.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if the awning's design was crazy, we could say that design's crazy.
Okay. Thank you.
If only they had aligned the bottom with the top of that regulating line and not the top, you would have been fine.
That would have been the 6 inches.
There you go.
I mean, really,
they did at least align up the top with the bottom.
That's what I mean. Yeah, that was obviously the reasoning.
But you're going to do more damage raising the thing up 6 inches than you are satisfying 6 inches.
We'll blame it on the group from Chattanooga that installed them. We did not realize we had to have a building permit. They came up on a Sunday and all of a sudden they're up. And they did look across the street and see the precedent that had been set at 8.5. So it's our responsibility, but we did not know it at the time.
I'll make a motion to approve the larger signs. And do we need a motion on the awnings, Lindsay?
The awnings are included in item number 2 in the staff recommendation. So if you wanted to address it that way.
Somebody help me.
You're going to just, number 2, the signs and awnings will meet the relevant aspects of city zoning code and building codes.
So the motion is to approve based on staff recommendation number 2 and approval of the signs as submitted for number 1. Is that an acceptable motion? It's the way I've stated it. Okay, that's my motion.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Since you walked by it quite a bit, we approved a mural yesterday on the west side, and we're working on the design for the mural on the east side.
Oh, great. All right, that is all of our reviews for today. We do have other business. We have the election of the chair and vice chair for 2023 and 2024.
So I'll lead us through that. So at the June 2023 meeting of the Design Review Board, we heard a nomination for Josh Wright for chair of the Design Review Board. Do I have any other nominations?
Who's not here?
Yeah. You, John.
Well, we got Suzanne already.
I think John wants to do it again.
Is that formal? Is that okay? Then hearing none, I will accept a motion and a second to nominate Josh Wright to the chair position of the Design Review Board.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any opposed? I'm not normally saying that. Okay, all right. Then the motion passes. Josh, you're our chair for the next year. And then at the June meeting, we also heard a nomination for Suzanne Taravella to the vice chair of the DRB for the year. And so are there any other nominations that we hear here? She's not present, but she did reach out to me and say that if there are no other nominations, she's happy to do it. She said begrudgingly. So do I hear a motion and a second for Suzanne as the vice chair?
I'll make the motion for Suzanne Taravella for vice chair.
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I
John.
guess with that, we'll close the meeting. Thanks, everybody.
Hey, just real quick before we all go, something that is there any way we can stop printing these and just do them on the board?
Yes, that is definitely an
Just for
opportunity.
saving paper. They're getting larger every time we come here.
They are. So what we've tried to do with the Historic Zoning Commission is encourage folks to bring tablets and laptops if you
Yeah.
have them, and then we'll print a couple of extra copies. I think when I took over staffing this board, everybody was really used to having the paper
Yeah.
copy. But if y'all are comfortable, and I'll send a reminder in next month's
I
notification.
apologize. What is everyone else's thoughts on that?
Agree.
No, that would be fine with me. We all have laptops,
Yeah.
tablets, and
And
whatnot.
there's the county public Wi-Fi is something you can connect to, and that we typically for HCC we print out a couple so that if folks forget or want to look
Yeah.
at something on paper, we have them. But if y'all want to start bringing something to look at it, that'd be great. Dallas and I would both appreciate that. Okay, cool.
Thank you.